Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
You've gotten my forgiveness, so stop blaming yourself. Jimmy looked at the fair complexion of Nicole's face. He understood what she was implying and clenched his fists while nodding furiously. When Nicole saw that he had gotten over the incident, a faint smile crept into her eyes. Just as Nicole relaxed her nerves, she suddenly felt her vision grow a little blurry. She lightly shook her head as if she wanted to regain the clarity in her vision. However, it was to no avail. Her vision gradually darkened. The last thing that she saw was Jared's handsome yet anxious face. He seemed to have caught her. Nicole gently shut her eyes. When Nicole woke up, she saw unfamiliar decorations in front of her. For a moment, she was stunned. She turned over and got off the bed. Suddenly, she looked as if she had realized something. She looked into the mirror and saw a girl in furry bear pajamas. She somewhat understood the situation. When Jared walked in, his eyes coincidentally met with hers in the mirror. He laughed for a second but quickly straightened his expression and walked toward Nicole. He did not let her speak and forcefully sat her on the bed. Nicole looked at him. She did not understand why he had such a serious expression. "Are you all right?" Jared did not expect her first sentence to be about him. He was stunned for a full second. She had fainted, yet she is still worried about me, he thought. His expression grew even more serious. When he looked at Nicole once more, his expression turned extremely cold. Then, with a tense expression, he stared into Nicole's eyes. "Does she have any idea how I felt when I watched her faint?" he thought. Nicole watched the man in front of her calmly. She even had the mood to smile at him. "I'm fine. I just haven't slept in a few days. I can't control myself when I relax." This was an after-effect of not sleeping for 7 days. It was probably something like a self-defense mechanism for her body. When Jared saw how she discussed the matter lightly, he was so furious he could not help but start smiling. His almond-shaped eyes narrowed. Suddenly, Nicole felt a hint of unexplainable nervousness even though his gaze seemed the same as usual. This feeling was unfamiliar to Nicole. She gazed back at Jared with her clear eyes. Jared sighed softly and stuck his hand out to Nicole. His fingers had beautiful bone structure. Nicole watched his expression and held his hand in consideration of his feelings. Jared stared at her right hand in a trance. Her slender and fair wrist that was touching him made him feel extra tender. Nicole noticed the look in his eyes and did not avoid him. After a moment, Jared said softly, "You've been unconscious for less than an hour." He looked at Nicole with eyes that looked like they were covered by a dark shadow. The doctor said you were overtired and had too little to eat for the past few days. On top of that, you did not get enough rest, he said as he caressed her wrist with a hint of sadness. "Nicole, don't make me worry." Nicole stared at his dark eyes and did not look away. Instead, she held his hand backhanded. She had light-colored eyes. They looked focused and beautiful as she gazed at Jared. She placed her hand in her palm and said in a charming tone, "Jared, I'm hungry." Jared was instantly speechless. But he could not resist this woman's coquettish actions. After all, this was the first time she was revealing this side of herself to him. "I've sent someone to prepare a meal. It'll be ready soon," Jared said while holding her. "All right. Now, tell me, who changed my clothes?" "I had a female nurse from back home change your clothes." Nicole breathed a sigh of relief when she heard this. Jared laughed in response. "Go get changed. You can eat after you change." "Sure," Nicole responded. After Jared left, Nicole stood up. She saw her bag on the coat hanger. She walked over and emptied the bag's contents before checking them. The last item that fell out was the piece of silver-white metal that she won at the moon house. She gently pressed at a random part of it. The piece of metal did not budge. Nicole frowned lightly. Nicole flipped the piece of metal over and saw the light circular carving behind. She gently rubbed it with her fingers. The silver-white piece of metal quickly flashed with blue-colored light. For some reason, the light only lasted for less than half a second before it became completely exhausted. Nicole observed the piece of metal in front of her with a thoughtful expression. She quickly kept the item in her hand. At the very next moment, she heard someone knocking on the door. "Nicole, come out and eat." Jared's pleasant voice sounded after the steady knocks on the door. Nicole responded coolly and placed her bag back in its initial position. Then, she opened the door and went downstairs with him. The servants were placing the dishes on the table. Nicole looked at the dishes of the day and looked at Jared confusedly. Why are there so many kinds of soup, she wondered. Jared kept a straight face and continued walking. He then said slowly, "Soups are very nourishing." Claus watched Jared from the side and was surprised. The boss hates soup. The fact that he made Nicole this many kinds of soups shows how much she means to him, he thought. Nicole was genuinely feeling a little hungry now. She barely ate while she was over at the Riddle family's place. Since she had not had a proper meal in days, soft and soupy foods would certainly aid her body's recovery. Jared frowned a little when she saw her fork reaching for the salad. He removed the lids of the 4 soup bowls beside Nicole and pushed them toward her. "Eat these." Nicole looked at Jared a little helplessly. There was faint rejection in her eyes. Meanwhile, Jared acted as if he was not aware of it. He had a faint smile playing on his lips as he gazed at Nicole with glinting eyes. Seeing how he was watching her, Nicole scooped up a piece of chicken from the bowl of milky white-colored soup. She chewed it very slowly but eventually swallowed it. Jared looked at her with faintly smiling eyes. Claus watched the 2 lovebirds and felt envious. The 2 of them were too good at making him feel lonely. He could not bear looking at his boss's expression. The 2 of them had their meal quietly. Nicole felt the warm liquid flowing into her stomach. She came to the realization that these were not ordinary soups. There were definitely many nourishing ingredients in there. She noticed that Jared barely touched any of the soups. She understood Jared's intentions. Nicole looked at Jared's doting expression and smiled slightly with her eyes. After their meal, Claus left the mansion without being told, leaving only Nicole and Jared behind. Nicole looked at him and raised an eyebrow. "I should get going too." Jared did not look like he had any intentions to walk her out. He cleared the plates absent-mindedly and said firmly, "Don't go back today. Just stay here and rest." Nicole saw that he was not joking around. She pulled up her sleeves and went up to help clear the table. When Jared saw her stand up, he frowned slightly. "Don't do anything. All she needs to do is rest," he thought. Nicole knew that her fainting all of a sudden today had caused him some emotional trauma. Therefore, she did not insist but stood back and watched him. He was only doing the dishes, but his movements still looked incredibly elegant. Jared placed the clean dishes into the cabinet. He then heard Nicole's confused voice, "Why don't you use the dishwasher?" She noticed the dishwasher in the kitchen the last time she came, but Jared did not seem to like using it. Jared's fingers froze for a moment before putting the last plate away as if nothing had happened. Then only did he turn around to dry his hands while saying indifferently, "I always feel like doing things by hand makes me feel more at home." Nicole was startled. She did not expect such an answer. This answer seemed a little strange coming from a man like Jared Johnston. However, it was oddly fitting at the same time. For instance, the plaid apron tied to his waist. The red and black Scottish style was not intended for him, yet it looked elegant on him. When Jared noticed Nicole's silence, he turned around and walked toward her with slight worry in his eyes. "Not feeling well?" Nicole chuckled. She was just thinking about something and spaced out, "I'm not that weak." She was not lying, her physique was definitely top tier. "I'm all better now after being unconscious for only a while." "I'm fine," she thought. Jared frowned disapprovingly. He wanted to say something, but Nicole had turned around and was headed upstairs. "Good night, Jared. Since he's worried about me, I'll sleep earlier," she thought. Jared watched her retreating figure and smiled. It looked warm under the glow of the dim yellow wall lamp. He suddenly had the illusion that she belonged here. He thought of what he had just said and gently held the fingers on his right hand. Just as he stood unmoving, the woman upstairs suddenly stopped moving. She had an indifferent expression, yet her gaze toward Jared was incredibly gentle. "You should sleep early too. By the way, you look good in this apron," she said before walking to her room, leaving Jared looking at his apron resignedly. "I'll wear it more since she likes it," he thought. The following morning, Nicole woke up early. She did not want Jared's mansion's strategic location to go to waste, so she did her morning exercise to her heart's content. After she got ready, she finished the breakfast Jared prepared for her under his watch. The two of them got into the car and drove to Royal Creek Institute. Nicole got off at the entrance of Royal Creek Institute. Suddenly, a hand behind her reached out to grab her arm. Nicole turned around and saw Jared's handsome face bathing under the sunlight. He looked fixedly at her and spoke in a tender tone. "Let's have coffee again after school. The one I owe you." Nicole thought of the incident from last night. She knew he was referring to the coffee she wanted, so she nodded gently. Right after, she saw Jared reveal a bright smile. He continued gripping her wrist with his fingers while looking at her with a twinkle in his eyes. "I don't want to let go." Nicole felt the grip on her wrist gradually loosen. She turned her arm to clasp his hand and said casually, "We still have a lot of time." After that, she let go of his hand. She got out of the car and walked toward the teaching and learning building nearby. The view of her back looked suave. Jared felt her remaining warmth between his fingers and slowly revealed a yearnful gaze. "I've thought about restraining myself. I've also considered getting to the bottom of things. But I couldn't control my raging feelings," he thought. He lifted his gaze. There was a twinkle in his dazzling eyes. "Nicole is right. We still have a lot of time," he thought. Nicole trudged toward the learning and teaching building. It was still early, so she was not in a rush. When she arrived, she saw someone who was not supposed to be there. "What are you doing here?" Zeke had been waiting for her downstairs for a long time. His eyes were filled with resentment when he saw her approaching him. "Didn't you tell me to wait for you at Royal Creek Institute every day at 4 a.m. once you get back?" His words reminded Nicole of her promise to Zeke previously. She had promised to help him improve his physique, but it slipped her mind because Mr. Riddle Sr. had been sick for the past few days. Nicole had an apologetic look in her eyes when she thought of this. "I'm sorry. Something came up recently." Zeke knew she was not the type to stand someone up for no reason, so he did not pursue the matter after hearing her response. He stared at Nicole's sincere expression and pouted. "I figured something must have come up for you." "Whatever. I forgive you." Nicole watched as Zeke pretended to act mature with his baby face. She thought he looked funny, but she did not say it aloud. She then said indifferently, "We still have time today. Let's go." Zeke's eyes lit up. He knew what she was implying. "Where to?" Nicole had already walked away without even sparing him a single glance. She answered flatly, "The sports field." "What?" he thought. Zeke hurriedly caught up with her. He followed behind Nicole and kept on asking questions like an inquisitive child. "Why are we going to the sports field? Aren't you going to teach me martial arts? Don't they say in novels that martial arts must be taught in some sort of hidden realm? How could we go to the sports field where people come and go?" Nicole glanced at Zeke and thought to herself, "Like Lulu, he's probably watched too many martial arts movies." Zeke noticed Nicole ignoring him but did not mind. He continued talking Nicole's ear off while they walked to the sports field. When they arrived at their destination, Zeke finally realized that something was off. "Nicole is being so patient with me today. She didn't ask me to shut up," he thought. Nicole seemed to have noticed his terrified expression. She reached out to pat Zeke on the shoulder and spoke in her usual tone. "You see this track over here?" Zeke followed Nicole's gaze. She chose the outermost track, which was almost 10 meters longer compared to the innermost track. His brows immediately furrowed downwards. "Nicole, you aren't." Nicole nodded happily. She then looked at Zeke and smiled slightly. Zeke instantly paled at the sight of Nicole's smile. He was on the brink of tears. "Aren't we learning martial arts? Why do I have to run?" Nicole's expression remained unchanged. Zeke kept on backing away, so she kicked him on his butt, thrusting him right onto the running tracks. "Today's your first day, so you'll only be running 10 laps. 10 laps. Only run 10 laps," he thought. Zeke felt completely helpless. He turned to look at Nicole, silently questioning her if it was too late for him to quit. However, Nicole looked at him with a smile that did not reach her eyes. That look. With a dejected expression, Zeke turned around and started running again. That is the look of her telling me to dream on, he thought. Nicole stood at Zeke's starting point with an unreadable expression. She only started frowning when she saw Zeke panting on the second half of his lap. I figured he'd have poor foundations, but this is worse than I thought. Yet he still wants to learn martial arts, she thought. Zeke ran past Nicole for the third time and instantly fell right onto the ground. He refused to get up for the life of him. I can't run anymore. If I continue running, I'll depart from this beautiful world, he thought. Nicole looked at him, a faint spark glinted in her eyes. She did not help Zeke up but watched him coldly. Zeke was used to being babied by others. He had never experienced being given the cold shoulder when he was dying from exhaustion. He looked at Nicole with a slightly dissatisfied expression. However, his gaze was met by her sparkling eyes. She spoke, "Get up and continue running." Zeke's eyes welled up. He grew up pampered, so he could not handle such hardships. He wanted to learn martial arts simply because he thought Nicole looked cool. The truth was, he was not willing to go the distance. He gazed at Nicole's face and used the three-step procedure that often made his father compromise, crying, throwing a tantrum, and running away from home. I can't run anymore. I simply cannot. I don't want to run. Why won't you just teach me martial arts? Nicole's expression turned cold. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Zeke indifferently. Zeke watched Nicole's expression as his voice gradually grew quieter. In the end, he was completely silent. He could barely lift his head under her sharp gaze. Nicole only started speaking when she saw him quiet down. This is how you handle the decisions that you've made. You give up when you're tired, lie down when you're upset, and throw a tantrum when you want others to compromise. Zeke, I would never have asked you to be my partner if I had known that this was your character. Zeke felt his face burning from embarrassment after he heard Nicole's words. He could not help but retort softly, I did not. Nicole's expression remained unchanged. She continued, you don't get to decide if you did such a thing or not. What I see decides it. Zeke, you've let me down. The road to becoming strong is not for everyone, she thought. After Zeke heard what Nicole said, the redness on Zeke's face gradually faded. His face was now drained from color. He tightly clenched his fist as he watched Nicole turn around and prepare to leave. He was reminded of the time Carlo sent him to a military camp. However, he had not even been there for over an hour before he started crying to go home because he was too tired. At the time, his father merely shook his head before kneeling down and patting his head. I won't force you. Back then, he was not aware of what he was truly losing. His father stopped sending him to military camps. He also stopped having demands related to his physique. It was as if he had forgotten to nurture him and allowed him to do as he pleased. However, Zeke knew Carlo really wanted him to become strong. He wanted him to be strong enough to inherit everything that he had. Perhaps it was because I complained about being tired and in pain. I didn't want to force myself, so father gave up on me as well, he thought. He stared at Nicole as she turned her back on him. The emotions that he was feeling seemed to gradually overlap with the look Carlo gave him back then. Her words of disappointment echoed in his mind. Something in Zeke's eyes slowly lit up. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Nicole, wait. He got up and stood at the starting line once more. He watched as Nicole stopped and turned to look at him. He slowly revealed a smile. I'll persevere. So don't give up on me. Don't regret choosing me, he thought. Nicole watched Zeke's back as he started to run once more. She returned to her previous position and stood still. Her slender figure and straightened back made her seem as if she were a ruler or a monument. 4th lap. 5th lap. 6th lap. He thought. Zeke's pace was getting slower. He knew that he was truly nearing his limit now. The 3 laps he ran just now were a piece of cake. 7th lap. 8th lap, he thought. At this point, for someone who did not have the habit of exercising, it was a matter of having a will that was strong enough. His legs had gone numb and were swinging mechanically. There was a voice in his head constantly shouting and instigating him, stop running, just stop running. You're too tired and need rest. This is enough for today. Zeke shook his head. The sweat on his face dripped onto the running track, silencing the voice in his head for a moment. He looked at Nicole, who was standing in the distance. Though his vision was a little blurry, he could sense that she was watching him closely. Zeke's legs felt as heavy as lead, but he tried his best and continued moving his legs. He was fighting the toughest battle with himself. We live to become better versions of ourselves. Lucifer is looking at me. I can't let someone who cares about me down again, he thought. 9th lap. 10th lap, he thought again. Zeke looked at Nicole, who was within arm's reach, and revealed a childlike smile. He firmly stopped his incredibly sore knees. He did not allow himself to fall onto the ground as he did previously. He then lifted his head to look at Nicole. His parted lips seemed as if they were conveying something. Nicole, I did it, he thought. Nicole looked at Zeke. He looked as if he had just gone for a swim. He was panting quickly with his body slightly hunched over. It was not a beautiful sight, but it was the best he had ever looked in her eyes. Nothing is tougher than surpassing yourself, she thought. Nicole looked at Zeke with a slight smile in her eyes. They looked incredibly beautiful under the reflection of the sun. Good job, Zeke. Zeke's eyes instantly lit up. He looked at Nicole and moved his lips before finally saying, "Thank you, Nicole." Nicole did not respond but helped him up. They slowly walked on the sports field for a bit before stopping. You should be thanking yourself, not me, she said softly. Zeke looked at Nicole and revealed a smile. But still, thank you. Nicole, if it weren't for your harshness, I would never have learned to man up and fight for myself. She didn't teach him how to run, she taught him how to grow up. Nicole patted his head and did not answer. She turned around and prepared to leave. Go back to class. You'll get used to it soon. Meanwhile, Zeke thought to himself, 10 laps is still a long way to go. Zeke watched as Nicole turned around and left without hesitation. He felt disgruntled and said frustratedly, "Hey, at least let me walk me to your school entrance." Nicole did not spare him a single glance. Northern Institute is practically right across Royal Creek Institute. If I were to walk him to the entrance, I might as well carry him upstairs too, she thought. I need to return to class. He ran slower than I thought. If I don't go back now, I won't be able to make it, she thought. Zeke could tell that Nicole was being serious. He felt a little resigned. Who would believe that a top-tier hacker like her was actually a law-abiding student? He thought. Just as he was about to jog over to her, he was stopped by the numbing pain coming from his legs. Zeke shouted anxiously when he saw Nicole leaving, "Wait up, Nicole." When Zeke saw Nicole stop and turn to him with a confused expression, he quickly dragged his handicapped leg and walked over to her. He dug through his pocket for a while before retrieving an ordinary-looking black box. "Here, this is for you." Nicole did not accept it. She narrowed her eyes at Zeke and said coldly, "Where did you get this?" Zeke reached out and grabbed Nicole's hand before placing the item into her palm. He was all smiles and said, "My father consented to it. Consider it my tuition fee." Zeke shuddered when he thought of Carlo's furious expression when he saw him rummaging through the boxes and cabinets back home. However, Carlo's anger instantly subsided when he found out that it was about sending Nicole a gift. He even proceeded to search for a gift with Zeke while reminding him to gift the item properly and to bring up his name in front of Nicole. Zeke was not afraid of his father's threats, but he was still a little scared of his fists. Nicole stared at the black box in her hand and stopped refusing the gift. Since this was a gift from Commander Guzman, refusing it would seem a little rude, she thought. She lightly nodded at Zeke before walking toward the classroom and saying, "Remember to do some stretches when you get home. Otherwise, you won't be able to finish the 15 laps tomorrow." Zeke looked dumbfounded. His face gradually shifted from one that was expressionless to fury. "Nicole, you idiot. Return that thing to me." Nicole walked to the classroom. She ignored the glances around her and sat down at her desk. Behind her, Gary had been watching her ever since she entered the classroom. He had an unreadable look in his eyes. He had spent the past few days studying and looking up information about Lucifer. However, none of his search queries came back with results. He stared at the blank web page and suddenly thought of Nicole's username on the school website. Both Nicole and Lucifer were unknown to him. It was clear that Nicole and his most admired Lucifer should not be related in any way, and yet he felt like the two shared inexplicable similarities. Gary grew irritated at the thought of this. He spun the pen in his hand and stared at Nicole with great intensity. Wayne, who was sitting beside Gary, noticed his dark eye circles. He followed his gaze and saw Nicole. He scratched his head confusedly. Gary's being really weird lately, he thought. After class, Nicole packed her things and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a voice came from the classroom door. "Nicole, somebody's looking for you." Vivian looked at Nicole impatiently with a faint gloating look in her eyes. She recognized the person who was looking for Nicole. The person was a die-hard fan of Snow Riddle. Since they were here to look for Nicole out of the blue, what good could come out of this? Vivian revealed a delighted look at the thought of Nicole embarrassing herself. How dare Nicole? How dare she not come to school and yet get all of Gary's attention, she thought. I can't stand her, Vivian thought. She noticed Gary's gaze on Nicole just now and was resenting her. Even God can't bear the sight of her and sent someone to teach her a lesson, she thought. Many of the people obviously had the same thought as Vivian. They all knew that Jimmy was head over heels for Snow Riddle. Since the incident between Nicole and Snow Riddle has spread across the campus, he must be here to stir up trouble for Nicole, they thought. They all gazed at Nicole mockingly. Nicole's expression remained unchanged. He looked at Jimmy and lightly raised her brows. How are you feeling? Everyone had a weird expression when they heard her question. Could this be a new way of mocking someone? They wondered. Jimmy looked at Nicole with a slightly agitated expression. He then walked up to Nicole and looked at her while saying a little worriedly, I'm feeling fine. But you yourself? He was there when Nicole fainted yesterday. He was so worried that he came to see her right after class ended. Everyone in Class B looked at them with even weirder gazes. Why are the two of them concerned about each other? They wondered. Vivian's expression darkened a little. She was certain that Jimmy would give Nicole a hard time. She did not expect things to unfold this way. Jimmy is being a little too nice to Nicole, she thought. Their previous exchange was nothing compared to what Jimmy said next. It made everyone's jaws drop. Nicole, thank you for saving me. If you ever need anything in the future, do not hesitate to let me know firsthand. I'll do whatever I can, he said and bowed solemnly at Nicole. He did not care about those around them who had their jaws dropped to the ground. How could this be, they thought. Vivian looked livid. She never expected Jimmy to say such a thing. What? Does Nicole practice medicine? What did he mean by her saving his life? Everyone wondered. They were here for the drama, but Jimmy appeared to be treating Nicole with a lot of respect. Nicole did not really mind. She responded indifferently, it's fine. I don't need your help with anything. Jimmy gazed at Nicole with immense gratitude. She saved my life but is not asking for anything in return. On the other hand, Snow Riddle demands so much of me, he thought. When he compared the two, it was hard for him to not feel biased. He was a little hesitant initially, but now, he was certain that he was on Nicole's side. He looked at Nicole and smiled slightly. I know what to do now, he said and bowed at Nicole. Then, he turned to look at the people of Class B and said, Nicole is my savior. If anyone bullies Nicole in the future, I won't let them off the hook. Jimmy did not have a very strong physique. However, he was the person who ran and maintained the school for him, so nobody dared to cross him. If he pins several posts that dug up dirt on me, I'll embarrass myself in front of the high school department and university department of Royal Creek Institute, they thought. The expressions of the people of Class B changed when they heard his words. Nicole looked at their expressions and raised an eyebrow with interest. She ignored the ruckus behind her and nodded at Jimmy before walking toward the cafeteria. Jimmy wanted to run over to Nicole when he saw her leave. However, he was swarmed by the curious crowd the moment he moved. Jack was the first to ask him a question. Jimmy, what's the matter? Why are you suddenly on Nicole's side? Everyone else looked at him with confusion. None of them knew why he was acting so differently. Jimmy's expression remained unchanged. He unlocked his phone and showed them a video. See for yourself. The video was not exactly in high definition and was a little shaky. It was obviously recorded by a non-professional. However, it was evident that the person in the video lying on the ground unconscious was Jimmy. Everyone had formed a circle around him, but no one dared to go closer. Soon after, Nicole ran over. She asked Jimmy's friends to do something, but the people crowding around them stepped back in fear. In the end, she was helped by the handsome man who came with her. After that, a lot of noise could be heard. It sounded as if someone was scolding Nicole. The crowd was affected by this. Even the person who was recording muttered indistinctive scolding. None of the things they were saying in the video could be heard. There were too many people. Nicole's expression remained unchanged. The man guarded Nicole as she quickly stabbed a needle into Jimmy's body. It only took a while before Jimmy regained consciousness and vomited dark-colored blood. At this point, everyone in the video had gone silent. Jack, Wayne, and the entirety of Class B also fell silent as they watched the video. Gary's gaze darkened when he saw Nicole and Jared make eye contact after Jimmy regained consciousness. He clenched his fists silently. Everyone watching the video was dumbfounded. It was evident that Jimmy had narrowly escaped death. If it were not for Nicole, they probably would not be looking at Jimmy right now. On top of that, she carried out the procedure so smoothly. Everyone revealed looks of astonishment. The country girl they always made fun of was actually way more skilled than they were. She was very cold, but she was also very gentle. Jimmy looked at their expressions and knew that they had come to understand something. He pocketed his phone and said, "When everyone was afraid of getting in trouble because of me, Nicole saved me regardless of our past. I can differentiate between kindness and grudges. I will never be able to repay Nicole's kindness," Jimmy thought. Everyone understood how Jimmy felt. He fell unconscious, yet none of his friends dared to save him out of fear and chose to watch him lie unconscious instead. Meanwhile, the crowd around him knew that the ambulance would not make it in time, yet they threw insults at Nicole when she still had the chance to save Jimmy. They were just worried that they would become an accomplice to murder if Nicole could not save Jimmy. Many of them lowered their heads in shame. If this were to happen to them, none of them could imagine what they would do. The crowd was totally silent. Suddenly, someone spoke quietly. "Were we wrong about Nicole? She was brave and really skilled." Many of them revealed confused looks. Vivian saw this and said calmly, "Everyone, don't be fooled by this video. If you practiced medicine, you would have come forward too. This doesn't prove anything." She then turned around to look at Jimmy. "Perhaps you changed your attitude toward her because she saved your life. However, I don't think Nicole is a good person for doing so. She simply did what she was supposed to do." After that, Vivian walked back to her own desk as she coldly sorted out her things. The remaining people were affected by her attitude as they silently went back to their seats. Yet, a few were still clear-headed and did not agree with what Vivian had said. Everyone saw what happened to Jimmy. In that situation, the person who stood out not only needed to be equipped with medical skills but also unparalleled courage and a sense of responsibility for life. If anything were to happen to Jimmy under their watch, it was not something that anyone would dare to shoulder. They shook their heads as they returned to their seats. Jimmy did not refute Vivian, but instead gave her a pitiful look as he then uploaded the video to the campus forum before putting his phone away. A person who is so engrossed in their own little world, not being able to see black or white clearly, sure is pitiful. Jimmy was very thankful to Nicole at this moment for allowing him to see things clearly, and not end up dying like a poor, confused bastard. He turned around and looked at Lulu, who was also looking at him as he smiled and said, "Come, I'll treat you to a meal." Lulu was still immersed in the shocking news that Nicole was the one who had saved her brother and could not snap out of it. Hearing that, she only nodded in a daze as she stood up and followed Jimmy. The reason she did not speak to her elder brother was that he was standing on Snow's side while she believed that Nicole would never bully Snow. The two barely spoke at all, so much so that this pair of siblings were as good as strangers. Jimmy looked at his little sister with a look of unbridled guilt in his eyes. "Lulu, I'm sorry. I've been led astray. I'm so sorry." He still remembered those horrible words he said to Nicole, and now each and every one of them came slapping him back in the face. When Lulu heard that, she snapped back to her wits as she smiled and said, "It's okay. You don't wrong me, but Nicole." Jimmy immediately said, "I've already posted that video up. I'll definitely help rehabilitate Nicole's reputation." When he recalled Snow coming to his class today, yet did not even deign to look at him, but because he could help her create waves, so she lowered herself to occasionally speak to him, a pained look appeared in Jimmy's eyes. What was wrong with him back then? when he thought Snow was a gentle person who deserved the title of the school beauty. Thinking of the upcoming school beauty evaluation, a determined look appeared in his eyes. The content Snow asked him to post were all posts ridiculing Nicole's birth and character, implying that she was not fit to be the school beauty. Even if she was of low birth, Nicole's character was not something Snow can discredit as she pleased. He thought. So, he had completely deleted all those posts yesterday. Looking at her brother's finally cleared eyes, a gradual look of relief appeared in Lulu's eyes. She was really afraid that she would never be on good terms with her elder brother ever again. As she thought of this, she hugged her brother's arm and smiled sweetly. "Jimmy, you need to interact with Nicole more, and you'll find that she's really a nice person. She had helped me plenty back then, so don't you believe the rumor of her bullying Snow. If Nicole really wanted to bully Snow, Snow would be long dead." As the two walked into the distance, a burst of laughter could be heard from time to time. After Jimmy left, Jack and Wayne exchanged looks and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Not only was Nicole skilled in martial arts, she even knew ancient Hustrobergian needle techniques.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.